all time. Um, I wanted to talk about putting together our top 5 Rumble moments slash matches all time. Not the best, just our favorites. You and I, you're older than I am. You obviously we've been watching wrestling for fucking 40 years now. You and I both. I'm hitting 40 years next year, actually. In fact, 87 is when I started. You started before that. So I want to discuss our top 5 favorite Rumble moments or matches, your choice. Because I got a few here. I got a bunch. And that's actually harder than I thought because I have a shit ton of ones that I do really stand out for me. So, Robert Genius, what is your 5th favorite Rumble moment or match?
Okay, my fifth one was from the 2018 Rumble.
Really?
Yes, and it was the 2018 Men's Rumble. And when they got down to the final six, there was there's so the final six were Rey Mysterio, John Cena, Randy Orton, Roman Reigns, Finn Balor, and Shinsuke Nakamura. And there was a lot of symbolism in the final six because in the final six, okay, also on one side, you had ruthless aggression guys. You had Cena, Ray, Randy Orton. The other side, you had more current people, Roman, Finn Balor, Shinsuke Nakamura. All right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then when you got down to the final four, it was like I think it was Roman, Shinsuke, and I think and then Ray and Cena. And then wait a minute, was that the final four? Maybe it wasn't. I forget, but no, it wasn't. It was. I think it was. The final four was Roman, Cena, Shinsuke, and Finn Balor. And that was so. Then on one side you had the two kind of chosen top guys, Cena and Roman Reigns, and on the other side you had the guys that came over from Japan. You know, the IWC darlings, Finn Balor and Shinsuke.
Mm-hmm.
And then the final two were Roman and Shinsuke, and who both in. So of course you had the chosen the chosen top guy versus the IWC New Japan Wrestling favorite.
Right.
So I mean, and it was just handled. That's the way you do a final six.
I gotta watch that. I gotta watch.
Yeah.
I don't think I watched it Rumble before actually.
Because well, I mean, now the Rumble match itself was fine. It kind of meandered in some places, but when it got down to that, and it's just. And then of course the sequence, it was a really good sequence to whittle it all the way down. And so, because like when you like the final four and the final six, there should be it to me it's best when there's some type of symbolism going on,
Yeah, of course.
and that was perfect all the way down to all the way down to the final two, and then again Shinsuke won the whole thing.
Mm. So he did win Rumble. That's right. He did win Rumble. Okay. It's interesting. And obviously Rumble was a favorite to win the whole thing, right? So a nice little swerve there, I guess, huh?
Yeah,
Nice. All right.
yeah, that was one of
2018's see 2018's
well,
kind of good for me because again I wasn't watching at the time, and even when I'm doing my catching up in hindsight, watching old manias and things I missed. 2017, 2018 is 16-2 also you can call that. It's kind of a blur for me, even watching in hindsight. So I gotta really lock it in those years some point down the road. My number 5 actually, you'll know this one of course, is Ric Flair's change of promo after winning the Rumble in '92. The first Rumble that actually meant something for the world title. We all know the Rumble is a massive, deal now, but back then they didn't. It wasn't consequential until that year. And Ric Flair was number 3 in that Rumble, and he went through the entire from 3 on. The way it was booked, you had some of the biggest names in history of the business at that time in that Rumble too. Piper, Hogan, Savage, you name it. And just the way he navigated that, that's this all of that. The way it was booked was perfect. It made me believe still to this day it is the greatest singular Rumble ever. So that moment though, selling that was amazing. So Flair's promo number 5 for me. Any thoughts?
Yeah, because honestly, okay, because I remember I was starting to kind of fade out at that point.
Hmm.
Um, but
Likewise.
but I was interested in how how they were going to handle Rick once he went over there, right? Because
Yeah.
as an NWA loyalist, Ric Flair meant the world to me. But Vince, we know, look, Vince is going to book you ever he feels like booking you, no matter what you did somewhere else. So yeah, I wasn't sure how they were going to handle Rick. So for me, him winning the world championship, that was, you know, Vince rarely validates what people do in other companies. Rarely. I
Yeah.
mean,
Because he's very petty.
yeah, he is, yes. And so for him to have Rick win that match and win the world championship, that was
And go over those guys. Went over
yeah,
Savage, went over Hogan,
yeah,
Sid, you
yeah,
name it. The
yeah.
who's who.
And so to do that, that was, I mean, that was a feel good moment. As much as we wish Rick was still in the NWA at that time.
Yeah.
That was a good, it was a feel good moment if you were any type of NWA loyalist, because that was validation. Like, you know, that was Vince finally, for once,
Acknowledging.
recognizing that, hey, that stuff over there on the other side of the street is actually good sometimes too.
Yeah. Because the way they treat Dusty those couple of years before then was oof.
Oh man, look, oh man, that hurt that man. Yeah,
We've gone over that many times over. Trust me, we know. So,
yeah.
all right, you're number 4, Rob.
Number four for me was 2021, and when Bianca Belair won the Women's Rumble.
Mm. Great
And
match.
and look, for all the obvious, and look, look, it is for all the obvious reasons. Okay,
Mhm.
it is okay. She was the first. I mean, look, Sasha Banks got. I mean, she did. I mean, Sasha Banks got pushed, really well and won a whole bunch of things. But Sasha never got. She didn't get the Rumble victory. She was never treated as if she was never given that type of push towards winning anything, or she was never given that type of push towards a big WrestleMania victory. And so for Bianca to get that and what it meant, it meant that there was, yes, there was some real actual changing going on, right? And that that they weren't just going to use the black woman to put over the white women. Okay,
Right.
because we
Absolutely.
cause, for years that had been the case. Whether it was Jacqueline or Jazz, in particular, those two in particular, um, and Sasha in a lot of ways was. I mean, Sasha got treated better than Jazz and Jacqueline did, but ultimately, she put over Charlotte and Alexa Bliss and Becky and Ronda Rousey. That was, you know, and so Bianca winning was it was a sign that, what, okay, that a black woman, there's a actually higher ceiling now for a black woman in professional wrestling. Not,
And of course, she parlayed that to win the title a few months later
yeah,
at Mania and main
yeah,
event Mania. In fact, night
yeah,
one.
yes,
So with Sasha
yeah.
night, legendary night. Great pick there. Um, Number 4 for me actually is from 1997 when Austin's face when Bret Hart came out when the music came on. Austin's shock face when Bret Hart's music came.
Mhm.
Fantastic. Great theater. That feud was the best of that year by far. That Austin Hart feud
Mhm.
from rolling out from 96 into 97, which really set the tone for the Attitude Era before it was Attitude Era, and really set the tone on Bret Hart's turn. And that doesn't. I don't think the Bret turn works with anyone else but Austin.
Oh yeah, because you need somebody. Well, because people they were already halfway booing Sean as it was.
Yeah,
So you needed somebody. If Brett was going to go all the way and turn heel, you had to have somebody on the other side who was not going to get booed.
Yeah.
And so Austin was at that point where he was really heating up, and people really gotten behind him.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, he was cooler than everybody else there.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, at
And
that point,
it'll only get bigger too as the time go on.
yeah. And so that's yeah. I mean, that's when you want to do a heel turn, um, you gotta have the right person to do it against.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. All right, number 3, Mr. Genius. What you got?
For me, number three, well, I was going to pick at least one with my favorite woman in wrestling.
I knew it. You can't avoid that, bro. You know that.
So, um, actually, I mean, there are actually three that I had in mind. I didn't pick all three of them,
Okay.
but
What wouldn't surprise if you did, though?
well, no, I'm not.
I'm joking, bro.
I'm not that.
I'm joking. I'm joking, bro. Come on.
Oh, I mean, well, because all right, obviously the one that the first time she won was great. Um, I really like the when there was when in 2022 now when Ronda Rousey came back. Now I'm one of the few people that actually enjoyed that Rumble match, and because a lot of people were just mad, they were pissed off at the fact that Ronda was even coming back, and they shit all over the match. But I thought that match was much better than people give credit for, and because that
Mhm.
one, Charlotte was actually she was SmackDown Women's Champion, and she went into the match as champion. She's like, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to win, I'm going to pick my opponent, and like she went on this run through that match, was just she was just throwing people out left and right,
Mhm.
and they intention and the way it was booked, they had her throw out a lot of fan favorite people to build up, just to piss people off even more. I think she threw out Lita, she threw out Mickey James, she threw out Rhea and Bianca, and then and then of course number 30, here comes Ronda, and Ronda won. But I just personally, I mean, but that's not the one I picked. The one I picked was last year because she'd been injured. She'd been out for a year.
Yeah.
She blew a
Yeah.
knee out, and this was, and just her coming back and winning. Coming back from knee injuries are not easy to come back from,
No.
and she was out for over a year, and just so to see her back in the ring and see her back in action, and get a big win like that, that was big deal.
Yeah. I like that one. I like that. I would have thought you picked that one, but I'm glad you did. 3 for me is actually in the same vein, sort of the domination that she showed there. Mine is from arguably my favorite Royal Rumble of all time from 2020, and that is when Brock Lesnar dominated everyone as number
Oh,
one guy.
that was so good, man. That was so.
You cannot. That was booked beautifully, beautifully. The way remember the first Elias comes down, starts singing the song. He goes out and grabs him the guitar. Then he got Big E, you got Kofi, you got Shinsuke, and all these guys. And he's getting worn down little by little, but he's still holding serve. Keith Lee at the time was on the way up from NXT.
Yeah.
They get into a little Haas match. Wasn't until Drew McIntyre came in there and eliminated him, which he got help from Ricochet, of course. But the
Yeah.
way they booked the entire Rumble in general from start to finish, but I love how they booked Brock. That was fantastic booking. So that's my number 3 favorite moment of Rumble history. All right, your number 2.
Number 2 from 2016, and this is very pertinent, going into this year's show,
Okay.
was AJ Styles debuting.
So to me, I get it now. I remember back in the day when it happened, when he got debuted. I remember being on the internet at the time and AJ Styles, like, okay, who the hell is AJ Styles? Yeah, and I wasn't watching at the time. It wasn't until 2019 I started watching the product, learning about him. I'm like, oh, I get it. This dude is. But also, this might be the first guy that had like a massive following on the internet because of being in other companies that WWE didn't sign until way after the fact, right? So the vibe was like, I'm assuming that, wow, they actually signed this guy finally, who had this massive appeal and popularity, but Vince never touched him until then, and then the crowd went nuts when it happened. I feel like maybe for me, there was a groundswell of like, you got to have this guy in WWE at some point, and finally he did it. After all this time, he's finally in WWE.
Because for me, like, I didn't watch TNA, so I had never actually seen him.
Prior 2016, never saw him.
Yeah, I never actually seen him. I'd heard of him because even when I wasn't watching, I was still like, reading.
You didn't know any of his work at all?
No,
Ring of Honor, nothing.
No, I read about him, but I had never seen him.
That's interesting.
So for me, you know, because look, I mean, if you watched TNA, obviously you knew who he was. If you were into to New Japan Wrestling and all that stuff, you knew who he was. If you only watched WWE, then you may have heard the name, but he was like an urban legend almost. Like there's this guy AJ Styles, he's really good. And he just seemed like one of those guys that just wasn't going, just wasn't going to come. And so like because like Roman had cleared the ring, Roman Reigns, he cleared the ring. He's standing there by himself, and this music hits, and it's not any music anybody recognizes. And then Roman even himself got this look on his face like, who the hell is this? Right? And so he sold it great.
He was what, number 3?
Roman, I think he was.
No. Roman's what?
Roman was number 1, I think. But
so AJ's number 3, right?
It was like 3 or 4, something like that.
Okay.
And so Roman sold it. He sold it great. And because he got this look on his face like who the hell is this? Right? Because so then and just when he comes from behind the curtain, and then so for me, now of course a lot of people who knew him were really excited, but even for me, it's just like, oh, that's like, oh, that's him. That's.
But the reaction that he got, you unless you're watching anything else, WWE, unless you're watching wrestling product outside WWE, people knew he was in the building at some point. People had idea who he was. So there was a groundswell already of people looking forward to this moment. Hearing, obviously, I'm sure the dirt sheets were all over this shit saying that he's going to be here at some point, or there's rumors about that. But the reaction was like, whew. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and see at that point, I mean, obviously the dirt sheets were a thing. So, but I mean, I didn't read dirt sheet. I didn't know he was coming. And so, and actually now that I'm talking about this, I completely forgot. This is why I'm being rushed to make these lists.
That's 10 years ago, actually. We should talk about that.
Yeah,
10 years ago, actually. I remember that. Jesus.
All right, so I'm okay. Because this just reminded me of another, and then you talking about 2020 with Brock. It reminded me of something I forgot when I was making the list. So I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna make this a tie for number 2.
Okay.
AJ debuting, and then Edge coming back.
Of course.
Because again, like
that one was perfect.
Now, in hindsight, now I understand there was some chatter in the sheets about him coming back, but again, I was not reading that stuff, so I had no idea.
No, exactly. There was chatter. Yes, I had no fucking clue.
Because I wasn't reading the sheets, and at one point it was funny because like maybe like 6 months prior, somebody actually caught him at the gym, and so there was some kind of rumors swirling around that he might be trying to come back, and he straight up lied. he lied to he just said, no, I'm not coming back. Come on, guys. He said, I'm just getting back in shape because I let myself go. I'm just trying to get back in shape. I am not coming back. Right.
The funny thing is, though, he did appear at the SummerSlam in 2019, a few months prior, but he didn't do it because it was in Toronto. But he didn't do anything. He was just there. and he
Yeah.
just came out and that was it.
Yeah.
But the thing was, back then in 2020, I did read some of the sheets at the time, things on the internet and IWC, all that. That actually might actually be honest with you, 2020 for me, it might be peak, me being a dirt sheets guy, because only because of the fact that you read on the internet. But nothing, and I mean nothing. I heard nothing on the story about Edge coming back.
Yeah.
That was a natural reaction. And for me, too, the reason I'm so glad you mentioned that, too, because that was one of my honorable mentions, too, also. It was a big deal for me because remember, that's the day Kobe Bryant died. So I came to that Rumble already depressed as is. All right.
Yeah.
And so that Rumble played a large part in at least making me feel good about something that day in an otherwise tragic day.
Yeah.
So and that moment was one of those, like obviously Brock and doing his thing, and the show in general was great, but the Edge moment was fantastic. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm with you, man.
Because
Go ahead.
because just I mean that because it's funny because the first half of that Rumble was Brock doing all of that stuff,
Yep.
and then and then the match had kind of cooled off after that. So then when he came out there, yeah, I mean, oh my, yeah, that was just man, that was just such a big deal.
Yeah, the whole thing was perfect. My number two actually is I'm going to go all the way back to 1989, the first ever Rumble on pay per view. And that was when the Mega Powers almost exploded before they actually exploded 3 weeks later, or 2 weeks later, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Hogan, and I say this quote unquote, accidentally knocked out Randy Savage. Remember, Hogan clotheslines Warlord, goes to the side where Savage and Big Bad News Brown are tangled up, eliminates both guys. Savage gets hot, and then they start. And that's important to the story because there was already some friction of the two guys, but it wasn't as palpable at the time. There was no physical contact yet at the time. There was just like little weird, eye rolling, and Jesse stirring the pot, this and that. But that was significant because that was the first time we saw actual contact between the two, where Savage pushed him, Hogan pushes it back, and they almost get into it. Liz runs down, down the aisle and trying to clear things up. Savage apologizes, and they clear things up. But that was significant. That was the last big piece of the things aren't as good as they seem before they actually broke up 2 weeks later in Milwaukee on the main event. So that moment for me was, again, another childhood, inflection point for me of wrestling. So I love that. That's part of the whole build. When we talk about like this being the greatest storyline of all time, this is what we're talking about. These little things, these little nuggets and nuggets and nuggets. And then you have the real big one here that set the stage for February 3rd, 1989. So Mega Powers almost exploding at the Rumble in 89. All right, but what is your number one, Mr. Genius?
All right, number one, we're going to 1990.
Oh, yes. Can I guess it?
Yeah.
Is it Warrior Hogan?
Yes.
Okay.
Because they were okay, so they hadn't really interacted. They didn't at all.
Never.
But you could tell, like, Warrior won the Intercontinental title back at SummerSlam.
Correct.
Hogan was world champion. They were kind of running on these kind of parallel tracks. They were both they were main eventing house shows and different tours or whatever. And you could kind of look at it and think because at that point, like that fall of '89, it kind of looked like, well, who's left for Hogan to fight?
Yeah, him and Savage burned out the whole thing already. Him and Zeus, they not putting Zeus in the fucking title match. Come on.
No. And so, like he, and then I mean, looking ahead to WrestleMania, is like, well, who's left? And then you saw, and then of course Warrior was on the rise at the same time. So you could kind of look at it and say, well, maybe,
But the thing was made perfect was that we never at that time saw two baby faces go at it. Vince didn't do that normally. That was the big rub.
Yeah, and then when they finally, during that Rumble, when they cleared the ring, and it was just the two of them. I mean, that was, I mean, that was such a huge moment.
And that's the thing too. Also, there was no story behind that. There was nothing that built up. It's just that they touched up on Rumble, and then these are just the two biggest guys. And to go back to 1989, 1990 at that time, there's an argument that Ultimate Warrior at that point was as big, if not bigger than Hogan. Remember, at this point, there is some wear and tear on Hogan. At this point now, there is a little bit of like fatigue, a little bit. So Warrior is typically the new guy at this point,
and like
new toy.
Warrior really looked like he might be the guy to
take the mantle.
Yeah.
Correct.
And so I mean it was because for like I remember during the I think it was 91 NBA finals when we had the Lakers and the Bulls.
And the Bulls, yeah.
Yeah. And then I mean it looked like at that point it looked like Warrior was going to be the guy to pick up the mantle and carry on after whenever Hogan was going to be finished.
Yeah.
And so then for them to finally meet, it was such a huge thing. Like it was
a big deal. I remember that being a big deal. No story. They announced the match, I think about a week or two later. The Ultimate Challenge, of course. We did a watch along on that. Check it out on the YouTube page. You and I did a watch on last year on that exact match. And just the importance of that match at the time. Warrior was supposed to be the guy. And I'm so glad you picked out number one, because it sets up my number one, actually. Because Warrior did become the guy, actually, months later. But my number one goes back to the 1991 Rumble. Because I don't like the Warrior. Okay, I was mad that he beat Hogan at Mania. So my number, you want to guess what number one is?
Is Sergeant Slaughter beating him?
Yes, but
really?
Correct. Yes. However, it's not Slaughter beating him. Who cost him the match?
Savage.
Who's my favorite wrestler of all time?
Savage.
There you go. Savage fucked that shit up. Bro. The hardest hitting scepter I've ever seen. Bro. And by the way, that feud was great because it was built up where Savage was asking for a title shot for months. And he will send Sherry to do his job, to ask Warrior, even throwing some little innuendos. And Warrior will say no. Which, for the record, why would Warrior say no to Savage? If you're the top guy and you don't hide from anybody, why are you turning on Randy Savage? That made no sense to me at all. That part of the story made no sense to me at all. But I love the fact that but probably why, because it sets up Savage. Savage says, well, you know what? You're not going to give me a title shot? I'm going to force you to lose your title. Of course he did. Because in real time, the Warrior run was a failure.
Oh, yeah. And that's
so I'm glad Warrior lost the belt. And not only lost the belt, my boy is the reason why he lost the belt. Now, obviously, I had to pay the price for it 2 months later because career match, of course. Savage loses the Warrior. He goes away for a couple months, of course. But yeah, that's what number one. Number one. Because that was a great feud, by the way, though. That was a great feud, though. That whole build up to that match was and again, Macho Man just doing his damn thing. So that's my number one. There's a couple other ones, obviously, that I do like. We mentioned, you mentioned some of my honorable mentions, of course. The Edge comeback from 2020 rather. Obviously HBK 95 against the toe tapping on the edge of the ring, winning the Rumble there. Think of some of them anymore. Cena's comeback, which I know in hindsight the difference in Cena's comeback in 2008. I love the Triple H Mick Foley match in 2000.
Oh yeah.
That's fucking a banger. So yeah, there's some really good moments there from Rumble. But these are my 5 favorite moments / matches of all time. So, which now leads us into